be making an official statement tomorrow. He's actually done a whole host of interviews that will drop tomorrow, and then with a number of broadcasters. All I'll say is that the misconduct charges that were brought against him were not in relation to a doping ban. And he felt that they were outrageous and unreasonable, and he wasn't going to be allowed the correct process during this situation, so wanted to take his fight to a higher level to make sure he could clear his name. So again, one for Conor Benn. I wasn't at the hearing, I wasn't involved with the process. We're here to support him. We're not his manager, we're not his press officer, but that's the information I can give you, and that will come to light tomorrow.
You mentioned about what's the next for Joshua. You've spoken about a potential rematch with Dillian Whyte, but you've also said that the fight with Deontay Wilder is the biggest fight in the heavyweight division right now. I mean, if you had to put like a stamp on it, what do you think happens next with Anthony Joshua? Can you say it would be Wilder or Whyte?
I mean, look, if you're looking at 3 fights for next year, which you hope for him to have, you know, maybe you go Dillian Whyte, Wilder, Fury. I mean, that would be the dream year, but probably one of them would be nice the way everything's going. So I think that, I just feel. I think someone was saying to me, I say, come on, AJ Fury's the biggest fight in boxing, not Wilder. I'm just saying, yeah, maybe, but like I do feel that AJ Wilder is just a massive global heavyweight fight. 2 sort of titans that, you know, the fight could end at any moment. And I just think it's a tremendous fight.
BT Sports, I spoke with a few of the guys there yesterday, and they gave the reason as to why the fight with Joshua never happened. Said, you run out of time. Now, that mega fight between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, how long do you think that should have taken to have been made?
Why do you think it run out of time? When, no, I'm not saying you, but like them, when Derek Chisora got an extra 4 weeks to do the deal, but we were told the deadline was when it was. You know, don't forget as well, that fight with Derek Chisora, they were negotiating that fight when they started negotiating the Tyson Fury AJ fight. So that took 2 months to make that fight. You're talking about a fight between Tyson Fury and a voluntary challenger, right, who's getting a great payday. That took 2 months. Yet we were only allowed 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I don't really want to go back and forwards. And I'm not saying we weren't at fault, but I'm saying everybody could have done better. We just needed more time. But I don't understand why we were put on the clock when Chisora got an extra 4 weeks. It doesn't really make sense, but it is what it is, and you know, on we go.
Eddie, do you believe Conor Benn's next fight will be Chris Eubank Jr.?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, firstly, the most important thing is that Conor Benn goes through a hearing and a process, because he has the opportunity to go and fight anywhere in the world right now. In my opinion, that's wrong, and we won't be a part of that happening until he's got an opportunity to clear his name. The Chris Eubank Jr. fight is a massive fight. It's probably, you know, could be the biggest fight in boxing at the right time. But at this time, we have no idea whether Conor Benn is going to be found not guilty, get a 3-month ban, 6-month ban, a year ban, or whatever it could be. But until that process is undertook, we can't really look at him returning in the ring. You know, and time passes very quickly. You're talking about, you know, September. You know, this failed test. So you go back over that period and say, okay, well, it started in September. When are you going to return back in the ring? I don't see him returning back to the ring, even best case scenario, till spring of next year at the earliest. But until he goes through that process, can't really think about a fight date. That's a process that he has to go through.
You mentioned on TalkSport, guilty until proven innocent. Do you believe he can truly become, to the fans, in their mind, renew his name?
Well, I hope so, because, you know, again, I know I get stick when I say I believe he's innocent, but you have to understand I've seen a lot more than you guys have. I've sat with this guy dozens of occasions in the last couple of weeks, with his family, with Tony Sims, with Nigel Benn, and whatever you think of me for thinking it, I believe him. To convince the public is going to be very difficult for him to do. We have the science to show that I truly believe this man could be innocent. So shouldn't we give him the opportunity to do that? Now, he needs to get out and get in front of you guys, which he's about to do. He's done a load of major newspaper interviews yesterday, which drop tomorrow. He's seen a number of major national broadcasters. I'm sure he'll get in front of you guys next week as well. And you can make your opinion. And I believe your opinion will change when you speak to him. But that's great. You know, I can't say, yeah, he's my mate, so he's innocent. We've got to see it, and it's got to be proven, and you've got to go through the process. And that's what he needs to do, because, you know, going back to us, we can't accept that he can't go through that process. Right now, he could go to multiple commissions in the States. He could go to the Middle East. He could go to Australia, go to Germany, apply for licenses and be able to fight on the information that we have. But it's not going to wash. He has to be almost brought to trial before the public, let alone commissions, the public, because they won't accept just, oh, he's fine, he can go and box somewhere else. So you've either got to clear your name or undertake a ban. And that's which way it's either going to go.
Last of all, what did you make of the video of Dr. Usman that leaked on Twitter openly admitting it's easy for boxers to drug cheat?
I think it's worrying. I think that, and again, Conor will talk to you about Dr. Usman. They've never been working together in a long-term relationship at all. But again, he'll talk about that. I think that there is cheating going on in boxing, and that's why we spend millions to implement additional testing.
Would it be better though?
What, the testing? Only if it's paid for. And promote, not. I mean, I don't want to blow out and trouble it, because in this situation it's been a disaster for us. But we are choosing to implement that testing with the fighters. Conor Benn asked for additional testing for this fight. Chris Eubank Jr. wanted additional testing. They don't pay for it. We pay for it. Right, the board aren't going to pay for it. But if the board don't acknowledge VADA testing, which they don't, and now all of a sudden they want to, and I'm not saying they shouldn't, but they should, because UKAD test only really for the big UK fights frequently. I think Conor Benn did, 3 tests for that training camp with UKAD or whatever it was. That's good. But normally, you ask the guys up here who are fighting for European titles or fighting for Central Area titles, I bet they haven't even been tested. They'll be tested on fight night, which is not enough. So we try and make things safer by having additional testing. Fortunately, it's not really irrelevant in the whole situation. But if we're going to pay for the testing, the board should embrace that and say, oh, great, promoters are paying for the testing. But we will acknowledge that with UKAD. Not, that's VADA, we don't listen to them. We only listen to UKAD, because that stance put us in a position where he'd passed all his UKAD tests. So on that basis, the board were going to allow the fight until they decided not to. Not saying it was a wrong decision, but they took 2 weeks to do it, and they put everybody in a very difficult position.
Would they have banned Conor if he didn't relinquish it?
I don't think so, but what he would have had to do is pay a misconduct charge that he thought was absolutely outrageous, and he didn't believe that on the basis of that he would in any way get a fair trial.
Why don't you think...
What was the misconduct charge he's taking offence to?
Tell you. All I will tell you is, and I shouldn't even tell you this, it is not in relation to a doping ban. It was quite outrageous, but that's one for Conor Benn.
Can you touch on the decision why he didn't decide to renew the licence?
Just because, for that reason. I mean, they wanted to put a misconduct ban on him, a charge on him, for a lot of money, not in relation to a doping ban. And he just felt that he wouldn't get a fair hearing. He wanted to take it to a higher level and then return to that issue once he's cleared his name.
I don't know if you've commented on this, but it was reported in the Mail a few weeks ago that there's a probe into another failed drug test allegation. Is that true? Is there anything you can say?
I've read a lot of stuff, and that's going to come out from Conor Benn, everything around the testing, because there's a legal process undertaken at the moment. But there's a lot of stuff, true and false, and it'll all be unfolded by Conor Benn.
Simon Jordan has gone again, and obviously social media sort of back and forth continues on Twitter last night. Well, he put out his tweets just basically listing through the things that you said, saying that sort of, well, I suppose just keeping up the sort of normal mantra.
I'm a massive interview for Simon Jordan. Like, it would be big for his career if he could get me on, and I might do that. Obviously next week we're in Abu Dhabi, the week after that we're in Cleveland, then we're back for Dillian Whyte, then I'm in Phoenix. Yesterday I was asked by Laura Woods to go on the show. I didn't have a lot of time. I went in, everyone said, oh, you didn't do Simon Jordan. I'm not here to help Simon Jordan get views. And I thought his views were very unreasonable. We can have a private conversation about that, or at some point that suits me, I will go on the show and give him some big numbers. But Simon's very good. Listen, I remember Simon Jordan. I first met Simon Jordan probably when I was 20. He was in Sinatra's bar in Port Banús. He was absolutely king of the world. And he came down Leyton Orient, he came in the director's room when he had Palace, and it's interesting to see that route where he's gone. But he's very good in TalkSport. I saw him with Souness the other day. I have no problems going on there, but I'm not going to rush around my schedule of international fight nights to rush in and see Simon Jordan.
Just on the Conor Benn situation again, you've mentioned that, and Jonathan just mentioned before about that sort of second reported test that had gone on. Obviously you can't shed too much light on that, but where could this have possibly come from? And obviously with the Mail reporting the first one, why has it taken so long for them to now come out with this second one that no one else has a...
True. So, again, one for Conor Benn, but you have to remember there's testing going on. He was tested every single week of this camp, virtually. So, there's a lot of tests that happen close to each other. Some that the reports are actually the same test, but again, one for Conor Benn, and that'll be outlined shortly.
If reports aren't necessarily true, does that leave you in legal proceedings with the
Well, again, I keep telling you it's down to legal proceedings. So, again, this is
The newspaper itself.
this is Conor Benn's fight, right? So he has to clear his name, and I can't talk about the case that could prejudice his case. So again, I don't mind coming out here doing hours of interviews with you guys, but you ask me the same question, and I have to give the same answer, which is Conor Benn has his own individual fight, and I have to let him do that.
Why don't you think Conor should have been banned?
Sorry?
Why don't you think he should have been banned?
Because he hasn't even had a hearing yet.
He tested positive.
It doesn't matter. What do you think if you get accused of something? I mean, you have to have a hearing. You can't automatically ban someone without a hearing, and especially when you've got the evidence that we have. So it would be outrageous to do that. And so many different instances. I go back to Dillian Whyte. If he wouldn't have had a hearing, you guys would have slated him. You guys would have never forgive him. And he had a hearing. He was completely cleared. And no one ever apologised, by the way. So let Conor Benn have his hearing.
Anyone online is referring a bit back, but to January when he didn't enrol in the clean boxing programme. What can you tell us about that?
He was never asked personally to enrol in the clean boxing programme. It's really the responsibility of the manager in that instance to enrol the fighters. Conor Benn knew nothing about it, and as soon as that came out, he enrolled the next day.
Are you able to shed any more light on the contamination story?
No, what I said is that if you look at the levels within the test, again, this will all come out, I shouldn't even be talking about this, and in terms of the testing around that, there is scientifically every chance that this is a contamination issue, because it is impossible, based on the substance, based on how long things stay in your system, for him to have been on a, whatever you want to call it, cycle or using this to the extreme. A load of this doesn't make sense, but you can't just say, oh, it's a contamination issue, on you go with your career. It's almost tough luck in many respects. But when you're speaking to experts, and there's a lot more other bodies that are going to be coming out in support of Conor Benn in due course, because they've been looking at it as well, these are the levels and these are the issues you're looking at when the tests are so close together.
Eddie Hearn, Hope Helen for Behind the Gloves, speaking with Eddie Hearn. If Conor Benn has his hearing, he's found to be guilty, will you still promote him?
Well, no, because he'll be banned. So, there is a chance that he will be found guilty, because unfortunately, as an athlete, you are responsible for the results of your test. Whether there's been a contamination, you have to prove that contamination. Again, the levels, the science, and this is not me, this is the scientists who are saying, we believe that could be a contamination. It doesn't make sense. That doesn't wash, right? When you're in a court of law, it's like, this is a contamination. Oh, right, okay, don't worry about it. If it was, you're very unlucky. But if you can't prove that contamination, even though it doesn't make sense, and even though what does make sense is that they can prove that actually you weren't using this drug as a physical benefit because of the levels inside you, you still tested positive, mate. And unfortunately, you're going to have to suffer a ban. Now, that ban could be 3 months, 6 months, a year. What I will say is, if he is banned, of course, we will acknowledge that ban, and when he's free to fight again, of course, he would resume his career.
Could he not get a licence elsewhere?
He could get a licence now. It's not good enough. Like, he could go, I could have done this fight firstly, I could have done this fight with a different commission on the night. Secondly, I could have done this fight in many different places around the world. You can't do it. You've seen the feedback, you've seen the response. He has to clear his name, or he has to have his case heard. So what we are not going to do, and what we won't accept anyway, is just to go and get another licence and put this fight on in December. No. Let's have the process, go through the legal process of Conor Benn, and then we see what the result is.
Eddie, is there any frustrations where you see the media coming out making their own assumptions when you always talk about you wanting to clear his name? Is there any frustration when the media putting things out that could be very far from the truth?
It's just expected. Look, I think people are doing their job at the end of the day. And like, what is frustrating is that people aren't giving him any chance to go through this process. Like, let him have his trial. When he comes in front of you guys next week or whenever that is, and you read the interviews tomorrow and you see him on across national media, see what you think, right? Digest the facts and then make your decision. But it's unbelievable. Like, I told him, when this happened, I said the first thing you've got to do is come off social media. This is, you've seen Conor Benn. He's quite an emotional guy. This will break anyone. Doesn't matter how strong you are. I said, come off social media immediately. And a week later, he said, how's the response been? And I said, do yourself a favour, stay off social media. Because it's outrageous that people won't want to give him any shot to explain himself. But he has to go through that process himself, and he has to get it right. And people say, well, "Oh, how long is it going to be?" Like, it's like, you have to get the information. You know, you have to go through the process. You have to make sure that you know, everything you're about to fight for is covered off, and that's what he's been doing.
Any word on Katie Taylor, please?
Obviously, you missed out on 3 potential pay-per-view dates this year with the 2 AJ fights and this Eubank Benn situation. Are you under a lot of pressure now with obviously the lack of UK subscribers according to reports?
No, the UK subscribers are fantastic. I mean, especially through, I have to give credit to our man KSI. You know, the numbers are incredible on DAZN. And again, leading up to Katie Taylor this weekend, Dillian White's back on November the 26th. You've got a big Josh Warrington fight. You've got Estrada Chocolatito. So, no, look, it was a kick in the nuts, Eubank Benn falling through. He would have done huge numbers on DAZN. But I believe you'll see that fight next year. And
Andrew Tate coming to the zone?
Andrew Tate.
Is the third most Googled person on the
Is he? No, it's one for Miss Fitz, guys. One for Calla.